Hello, welcome to Justice for All's podcast called Connections with Coffee. My name is Joel DeWeerd. I'm the executive director at Justice for All. I have Ron DeWeerd here with me. He is the chairman of the Sioux and Lyon County Long-Term Flood Recovery Group. And we're on episode 16 of this podcast, and we would just love to be able to share a little bit about who Ron is and what the group is and kind of how things kind of came together and go from there. If you wouldn't mind, I guess, sharing a little bit about, you've been around a little while. Maybe let's start with, how you got, what did you maybe do? You're retired.
I am.
Okay. I thought I had that right. Maybe you're working full-time in this capacity, but not for any particular employer. But maybe just give some background, how long you've lived in Rock Valley, what you did for work before this, career-wise, stuff like that.
Yep, sure. So my wife and I moved here in 1992. Our family had been looking for a home, and we'd come from the Middleburg area, and so
there's not a lot of homes in Middleburg, so I can see where you might.
Yeah, and so anyway, the short story was we ended up in Rock Valley. It was a nice community that we had chosen, and so I wasn't working out of town then. I really was in between kind of jobs. And,
okay.
I took a part-time job at the elevator and Dune and et cetera. But
what did you do before? What did you do out of Middleburg? I guess, did you grow up in Iowa in this area, or?
Well, as a kid, I grew up in Sheldon.
Okay, yeah, Sheldon.
Yeah,
All
right. I am not really a Sioux County native.
No, but it depends on what part of Sheldon you grew up in.
But anyway, we were in the area for most of our life. Went to school in Sheldon at grade school, Christian school.
Okay,
and then went to Western Christian High School.
All right.
So when I came to Rock Valley, we were in our mid-40s, I suppose.
I'm familiar with that age.
I began working for a freight company in Sioux Falls, and eventually feeling like God was calling me to do mission in a special way.
Yeah.
I answered the call from the diaconate in the Iacota diaconate. Okay. And that was to be a construction manager up in Grand Forks and East Grand Forks, North Dakota. Just so I can have an understanding, you worked for a trucking company and doing logistic type, or you were a driver, or what were you? I was some of the all above category. So I began as a mandatory driver. You had to do a mandatory stint as a driver. Okay. And then I became sort of a problem solver. So if there was having issues on any routes, they would send me there to figure out what it was, and then we'd do recommended kind of. So
logistics, okay, we got to get from A to B, and
we're not getting there.
We're not getting there. I gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So when you moved to Rock Valley, when did you start then, someone from the classis Iacota, or what, diaconal, maybe expand on what that means a little bit, because I'm not exactly 100% sure what that means.
Okay, so most of the Christian Reformed churches in this area belong to the classis Iacota. Okay. And it involves churches in South Dakota and Iowa.
How many churches is that, if you had?
Oh, man.
50?
I don't know. I don't know.
All right. More than 20, less than 2,000.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be a good estimate, I guess. But anyway, so Mike Menning was had a position that I didn't know Mike, except that I knew he went to my church. Sure. We were going to Trinity at that time. Okay. And
he was probably officing out of here. Did you know he officed out of this building?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I do.
All right.
But anyway, I think in a conversation somewhere, I had maybe shared with Mike that I was really feeling God putting a call on me. But other than that, we'd never talked. And so out of the blue, I get home one evening, and there's a message on our answering machine to come over to Mike and sure. have some hamburgers. So my wife and I went there, and after the meal, he said that the diaconate had been kind of looking at sending someone to the Grand Forks area after the floods in 96 and 97.
Okay.
It was actually the spring of 97. That winter, they had like 120 inches of snow.
Oh. And
the Red River had jammed up in the north because it flows north. And then it just flooded an incredible area. I mean, like Grand Forks, 50,000 people were evacuated. And so they felt that it was close enough for people in our area who could respond, but they needed someone to sort of manage a site. Yeah. And so he asked if, he said, I don't know what you're doing, but, and so like this was an answer to prayer for me and my wife.
That's incredible.
It's like, and so went there, and I really, didn't know what I didn't know, obviously.
Sure.
But I had worked as a commercial bricklayer for a number of years in the area. And so I knew things like blueprints and
some construction-y type things.
Right.
That figured out.
And so I went up there and I basically set up the site for volunteers, and it grew into incredible response.
So how far away is Grand Forks from Rock Valley?
It's 5.5 hours.
Okay.
Going as fast as I could in my little Le Mans Pontiac.
6 hours roughly. Pontiacs go fast.
Yeah. No, I think it was roughly 350 or something like that. I don't know. Yeah.
All right. I'm not the most familiar with North Dakota. I mean, other than it's a state above South Dakota, which is borders to Canada.
Yeah, it's about 75 miles north of Fargo.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Was it on 29?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Then I must have driven through it at some point because I've been to Canada up through 29, but anyway.
I'm sure you went right through there, yeah.
It was a blink, and it was in college, so I wasn't really paying attention then.
Right.
So, all right, so God put a call in your heart for something different when you were working at the trucking place.
Right.
I hear that.
Yeah, Well, it was kind of interesting. I don't know if this is even a good story,
sure,
but I guess
do it.
While I was working at the trucking company, I became friends with a FedEx driver, out of Sioux City, and a Brown UPS out of Sioux Falls, and we had big radios. If people are familiar, when you drive truck, you can have usually you're on channel 19 or something like that, but we were on channel 650 or 700, and we would go up there because we were all Christians, and we would drive to either through Omaha or to Omaha. Together, we'd meet up outside of Sioux City on the air, and then we'd have this little hour and a half kind of fellowship.
You get a brotherhood.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
And then we would pray together, and we would do intercessions and things like that. And like I said, it gradually grew that response within me even greater. As we had that relationship.
Yeah, that's awesome. So people you didn't even know, except they were. How did you get in touch with that? If you don't mind me asking. You don't
remember? So driving through Sioux City, I was trying to fix a route that was from Kansas City to Sioux Falls.
Okay.
And it was a meet that was somewhere down by in between. And anyway, so I would be heading through Sioux City probably around 5:30 in the evening, headed south. And one night just happened to pick up this guy on channel 19, and he's talking about things, and he says that, and in the conversation, I tell him I'm a Christian and so forth. And that was like first, he was one of these charismatic guys.
Sure.
Wasn't afraid to talk about Jesus.
Hey.
And
that's it. I mean, you'd think it wouldn't be as difficult as it is. Right? Like you would think, hey, if I'm living my faith, I'm not scared to talk about it. But that's a legit fear to kind of overcome because you don't know what response you're going to have coming back from somebody.
Exactly. But anyway, in that introductory, he said, "I've got a buddy that drives a UPS truck. We usually get on the road here." He said, "How big is your radio?" And I said, "I'm pretty good size." And he said, "Got channel 700 on there. Let's go up there." Okay. And so that's where the three of us would meet every night. Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty cool. I think that's cool. I think that's awesome. So, all right. So,
and by the way, we could reach each other for about 60, 70 miles apart.
Sure. Yeah. You're still going through the thing, but like you go, was it just for my own visual? Is this like a CB radio? Like you had to like click in and do all, because it's the 90s or whatever it was. Like
it was the 90s.
Like, so you're like hanging on and being able to talk about stuff while you're driving and doing that and like hear everything.
Yeah.
No. Oh, I think that's cool.
And nobody else was up there, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's
unless they wanted to listen.
Sure.
In.
Yeah. If they want to turn to channel 700, which
and some of them didn't have big enough radios to do that.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. All right. So you've gone from and maybe just to backtrack a little bit because I don't think I covered it all. You had mentioned a spouse. I know you're married. Like, you have a family. You have kids.
Yeah, I'm married to Pat
Okay.
Wheeling. She's from Orange City. She was from Orange City.
All right.
I took her away. I don't know if we've gone back. Yeah,
up to Middleburg. We're leaving this cesspool.
Yeah.
Let's move up to Middleburg. No.
But anyway, we had 4 children. We have 15 grandchildren.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. We've been married 56 years or.
You know each other pretty well then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal. All right. So at this point, because I guess in my mind, since I'm almost in my mid-40s and you were in your mid-40s at the time you got called to Grand Forks, I guess, kind of. I mean, I'm thinking like your kids are probably they're probably an age that they are, I don't know, your kids were still in the house?
I think we only have one daughter that's not 50.
Okay. All right.
We have 3 sons that are over 50.
Okay. So I don't know how old you are. So your kids were out of the house or close to it when you were going to Grand Forks on a regular basis.
Yeah, we had our daughter still in the house when I was starting to serve in Grand Forks.
Okay.
She got married during that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Because I'm just trying to. Because like for me, like I have kids from age 17 down to age 6. So like I'm just thinking, if I'm having to if I feel called in, it's have to be a pretty loud call. Like the Lord is going to have to come down and be pretty hard. Like here's where you need to go. So like I'm just trying to contextualize a little bit, where someone is in someone's life a little bit on being around.
Well, that's a really good point because a lot of people probably don't know exactly what a mission call or what that means.
Sure.
And it's tough on a family. Because you're committing pretty wholeheartedly to something that is going to take a lot of your time and a lot of your effort.
Yes.
And so it needs to be a commitment that both of you make together.
Oh, yes.
And in our case, far more easy to make that decision when you don't have kids in the home. I don't know how it's possible, frankly, to put yourself and your family in those positions.
Yeah.
It would be an incredible decision to make.
Well, unless you are taking everybody with you, right? Like that'd be the only thing. Like a missionary, like what that was going to India or wherever, and they have kids. They would probably take all the kids. They're not going to just send one of them.
And that's
somewhere.
A different context. Obviously,
right.
This was an intensive construction.
Right. Still a calling and a sacrifice of. The comfort of things known, I would imagine. Like what you're used to, and you're like, but you were obviously being moved into becoming uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it was. So I wasn't like scared.
Okay.
Because I just knew that God
had something different.
Had opened this door that we were asking to be open.
Yeah.
We had no idea what door would open.
I see.
I guess one of the things that I didn't know when I went up to Grand Forks was how much time it was going to take.
Yeah.
Part of the job description became every other week I had to travel to different churches in around the tri-state area to invite people to come in. And
you're on like a recruiting tour of
every other week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go to a church, do mission moments, do the service, whatever.
Yep.
Sunday was a work day.
Yeah.
And obviously living so far from home, we had to make some adjustments. So Pat would come up to Grand Forks on the weekends that I had to travel. Sure. And she would travel with me for that weekend so we could be together.
That's nice.
And then the other weekend I could come home. And
so how long were you in Grand Forks, like as your home base?
Okay, I moved up there in August of 1997.
Okay.
and I worked until September of 1999.
2 years and a month,
if
my math is correct. So that's a good stretch of time.
It was huge.
Yeah.
It was a big project. We had
was it like residential homes that you were fixing, or businesses, or both, or like what did that look like?
Well, we did about still primarily residential.
Okay.
Because there was a large floodplain that had been affected.
All right.
But within that floodplain was also churches that we would do, and so I think all total we ended up doing rebuilds on about 80 in our construction site.
Yeah.
Because there were a number of people there. Lutheran
80
River Relief.
homes or 80 churches?
80 homes.
Okay.
We did 7 churches.
Okay.
I recall one particular job was a huge total gut from top to bottom, and Focus on the Family was looking to bring a team, and they brought some incredibly skilled people with a lot of really good tools.
Okay.
And they did that church in one weekend.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or they were there for a week, just about. Yeah,
sure.
For a week.
But they were able to commit to.
But that was some of the things that I got invited back to them as well to do a little chapel with their staff and stuff like that. But
neat.
And so we recruited everywhere.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to make it known. So, as part of the pivoting into where we're at now, which I think is an okay segue, I would say.
Oh, I forgot. We also formed a corporation with East Grand Forks with the working our work site.
Yep.
We called it was a corporation with the city, so we built 10 new homes as well.
Oh, what was the name? Did you have a name?
Yeah, it was called the Sienna Corporation. We just formed it World Renew had to sign some things, and I had to sign some things, and
everyone kind of had a little part of that deal to rebuild homes and to build new homes in the Grand Forks area.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So after Grand Forks, again, and I eventually want to segue into long-term flood recovery, because you were doing flood recovery, 30 years ago, just about.
25. Yeah, 27. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so what, like in between there, after Grand Forks and that 2 year, what did you move into, and was there something that was?
Yeah. So as it turned out, the diaconate after 4 months turned the site over to World Renew.
Okay.
At that time it was called CRWRC.
Sure. Yep.
And so I became paid for, or an employee then of CRWRC.
Okay.
And then at the end of that 2 year period, then that site was going to be closed. And so I was like, now what do I do?
Unemployed, kind of.
Right. Well, about to be. And it was kind of interesting. I had committed to God not to go ahead of him. Right, so I was just waiting,
Wow.
But I would, with all my confidence, I would still go to my room at night and say, "God, I'm over 50 and I need a job."
Yeah,
right, and but he was faithful and all that. When I was I think the end was September, like I said, of 1999.
Yep.
My boss at World Renew called me one day and said that they had formed an organization of disaster relief agencies who were going to do international agricultural development, and they needed somebody to develop the organization here in the U.S. For revenue and that sort of thing. So she thought I would be a good fit and asked me to do that for the organization. So for the next year...
You were development director?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And there were no other employees, so... For 7 months, I laid out
your own funds for yourself and to promote agriculture in other countries and things.
So anyway, that it was an amazing career that turned into 23 years.
Wow.
Working for that organization. We had, I think, a board of 16 mainline denominational agencies that I was responsible to.
Sure.
I never changed positions. I was always in the development side.
Yeah.
But because of the way they wanted us to experience the work and be able to work together.
Yeah.
They had me travel overseas a lot.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't part of that piece of the work.
Well, I guess my thought is if you're going to try to develop relationships and develop funding and develop teams, like you got to be able to share firsthand what it was like in, I don't know, wherever you went. But yeah, so that would, I guess, That's a fair amount of travel. You've seen the world a little bit too while you're at it.
We did, and I say we because it soon became clear to me that when you travel overseas and you see that kind of poverty that we would see in developing countries, you come back and it's pretty hard to debrief. It's pretty hard to come back and say to your spouse, for instance, if they stayed home, what it was like. But if your spouse or some significant people around you would come along and experience that, you smell the same smells, you see the same things, and you can go, you remember when? And, and they do,
you can share that. You can share the commonality of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, having a spouse, having someone go along when you mentioned going to the other countries as the development director and the people that you're working for. So, World Renew was in there. I know that. You mentioned you worked for them. They got you into the next position where I guess I'm trying to get it kind of tied into what I think is pretty cool is those experiences and then how it relates to today and what's going on. What's going on today? Maybe you want to tell folks that.
Well, okay. So I'll just back up a little bit to June. 2024, right?
Yeah.
I've been retired 3 years. I've been doing small things to stay. I mean, I'm still actively doing some things for Growing Hope Globally.
Okay.
But not as a staff person. Okay. I was doing little things as far as ministry that I felt God was asking me to keep doing. And so that's basically what I was doing. And the flood happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And for me and my wife, it was really surreal because we weren't a victim. We weren't. Our house was undamaged, right? And so we were wondering, well, what should we do? And obviously, I'm done. In 2014, when it happened here,
it happened there too.
I was part of that discussion, part of getting it organized. Part of getting that organized and helping, but it was way different than this time. But anyway, so the flood happens, and we're looking at one another. What do we do? Right? We said, well, shall we give up our home to somebody? We were asking, maybe we should call a pastor, and the phone rings on a Sunday morning when we were talking about it before we went to church, and it was Andy Visser, and he said, our building's been flooded. Would you mind putting up our business down in your basement for a while until we can get resettled? And so, again, it just seemed like when we were asking God to point the direction, he did, actually.
Yeah, provides it a little direction for you.
And so, for 7 months or more, we had a business in our basement. And so that was part of our contribution. But I think I offered to help Kurt Frangie one day at Habitat for Humanity, do some things, and we got to be talking and friends a little bit. And I think in August he called me. Pat and I were out in eastern Iowa, and he said, "Say we've been asked to have some discussions about long-term recovery for the flood, and wondering if you'd be interested in attending the meeting." And of course, I again felt like nudged to be part of it. Like I said, I didn't really throw my hat in the ring.
No,
but Kurt did invite me.
Well,
so
it's a combination of having someone who knows some people and having the ability to present an opportunity to say yes. Like if you don't know it's an opportunity or it doesn't get presented to you, you don't know to say yes or no.
Well, I didn't know what they were going to do. This was a total surprise to me, this whole emergency management system that was developed by the county. And then the recommendations by the Department of Homeland Security saying what you really need to do is you need to form a long-term flood recovery group.
Right.
But it's not just a flood recovery group. It's a long-standing permanent committee that will respond for the next who knows how far if there's a disaster of any kind.
Yeah, whether it's tornado or, a slew of fires or whatever that might be.
Exactly.
There's hopefully there's a structure in place to handle the emergency and the recovery of some large scale like a flood, but other disaster as well.
But then at that first meeting, I came expecting to see just a few people, and the room was filled with people, if you recall.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sat in the same row by Stan DeWeerd and Kurt and Rob Skelling. Yep. And those are all guys I knew well from other times, right? And so after the meeting was over, we were pretty heavy into a discussion of how it's going to go.
Yeah. You're ready to get started tomorrow. Whose house are we going to first? That's probably how it started.
Well, like I said, these are all guys who have been giving to the community for a long, long time.
Yes.
They're committed to the Lord. They're committed to the work. I appreciate everything and every skill, not only, but their opinions matter, right? And so, then the next meeting was supposed to happen, and there were a lot fewer people at, and that's when they put that clipboard around the room and said, if you want to serve on a committee,
you better put your
sign in. Yeah. And guess what? No one signed in except 4 people. You recall that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because that's how... Because I didn't really have a relationship with you.
Nope, sure didn't.
But we sat at a table. Your name was on the list, mine, and some representatives from Rock Rapids and from Haywarden.
Yep.
And I don't know if these were God's words or not. But Joel said, "You're retired. You're chairman."
You have the ability. Well, I didn't even know how much. I didn't know how much knowledge you had about long-term flood recovery. Like it just made sense. I knew it wasn't something that I wasn't going to be able to manage between regular operations at JFA and all the things that go along with that. And I'm like, man, if you're retired, I think this is a good fit for you. You know, But not knowing that you were certainly the right person for all of this.
Well, it was a good fit in the sense that I knew really what pieces needed to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like between conjoining, like what construction needs look like and what that is, plus knowing out in development work. Like that's, having done development work before, what I get, that takes time to be in the church, to be in a place, to send out things, to go do that stuff. So like being able to join those two things together, I think it was totally right. You were totally the right person for it. So I'm just glad I was able to get you onto that thing.
Well, again, we've had an incredible experience.
Yeah.
It took several months, as you know, and as maybe not many people do know. But if you would look at a video of us at a meeting, there are about 16 to 19 people on our team now. Yeah. All of them covering some aspect of recovery. I guess everybody would think that that's what we do is rebuilds only, right? And we're connected in probably in a strong way because of the skill sets we have, but a focus on rebuilding the community is a big part.
Yes.
But we have 4 construction managers to handle rebuilds in 3 communities, and no lack of skill, no lack of direction. And so that's a major part of what we do. But there's so many things that people don't know. We have about 8 other people around the table that are involved in other aspects of flood recovery. We have a case advocacy that follows up and sees if unmet needs are being done. World Renew came in to do those unmet needs assessments. And so people have answered some of those survey questions, and they get on our construction list, right? And on our other unmet needs list. But we have a counseling and pastoral care committee.
Yes.
And we're adding a piece right now that's going to probably include some kind of financial counseling and other resources besides JFA and Love Inc. and
certainly in the
Atlas
physical resource
and all those
stuff
things.
Have been able to, there's been referrals that have come through our building, and like those are just things that are naturally going to happen, especially when you lose pretty much everything in your house in some cases. But there's so much more depth to it than that. Like from being displaced to rebuilding to the trauma that would go along with when in the summertime, as a rainstorm is going to happen, like there's probably going to be people who are going to be like really having a hard time making it through going, is there going to be another flood the next time it rains hard?
Exactly. And just the overwhelming pieces of having mortgages that weren't paid and then trying to take on new debt.
Deciding if you're walking away, I got 150 here, I got to get
or having $140,000 rebuild cost and then only getting 20,000 or something, whatever. I mean, I just don't want to start with numbers.
I got you.
But I just want people to recognize that when you become overwhelmed and you don't know where to turn, that's also long-term flood recovery.
For sure.
Right? We have some aspects of our teams that can do that.
It's not I guess the long-term flood recovery group is not a one thing. It's a multifaceted, table of people that it can plug into, seeing different aspects of it, and just trying to keep everyone somewhat abreast of where they're at and how to present needs and how to find resources. And we're going to get you over to this person because this is kind of their resource of what they can handle. And just being able to function all that takes a group of people with the right mindset, the right attitude of how that all goes. And I think it's been, I guess I would say it's been encouraging to be a part of that and to know that even though my house isn't in Rock Valley, but being being at Justice for All, being the director, I think our ministry needs to be involved in that. And that's just a part of the fabric of this community and the fabric of the way that I am. But yeah.
Well, I didn't even recognize how important that relationship with Justice for All was going to be, actually. But being a fiduciary,
we have a whole
agent for us in this,
for it,
so we can move immediately into business because now we have a 501c3 for donations.
Yep,
and we also have an immediate warehouse for
when things come in,
partial things. So we had to have heat for things like mud for taping and that's and also paint. Right, we need a little warm place.
You can't have it be sitting out in the cold like it was last week. Now this week maybe is different.
But having cold storage besides, we and this is some things too that we're really happy and pleased about. But all these things take time.
Yeah,
right. Putting a team together took us several months, and these are all unpaid people, right? I mean,
correct.
These are all people who care about the community and are willing to give time for it.
Right.
And so I think that always blows me away. Of how many hours people will do to make their fellow citizens or their fellow community members whole again, right? And because it is hard, it's a long task.
It takes a long time,
and then after that, we develop that credibility, and probably some of that credibility obviously comes from our relationship with Justice for All.
Sure,
and so we can apply for things like the grants that we have received already from Lowe's and the ones that we have applied for to other places and so forth. So without that kind of credible base, without a Facebook page, without people that can help us put those things together and content.
All of that. Yeah, like it's so multifaceted. Like that there's not one entity or one person or you're like, oh, that person. Like there are key people, but it's not one person trying to do all of it. It's whatever, about 20 plus trying to work together in the capacities that they can to make it work for the long-term sense of this community and for Hawarden. And I know there's some in Lyon County as well, like just trying to stay in the long-term 2 to 3 plus year of it. And however long it takes is how long it takes.
Yeah.
So one of the things I did want to also get to was what are there, I know an event that's coming up, but are there other things or other ways for people who can get involved or be a part of, if someone listens to it or somebody watches it and they go, hey, you know what, I want to be involved in the long-term flood recovery group. How can I help?
Oh, well, okay. So one of those things we talked about that was so beneficial in international development, and that is coming.
Yeah.
Be a part of a group that comes and does construction, or be a part of a group that comes and can visit with people. Some people think that that's not even useful. But you know what? If you could send somebody along with a team that all they do is
just visit with people, and ask
someone,
them their story.
Just a quick story. There wasn't a country or a village that I visited, no matter their financial status, that didn't have somewhere in that community women putting a tin can on their door. The chickens crawl under the door and the pigs running back and forth in the house, but they would put a tin can with flowers on their. Everybody wants that. So even just come to make people feel that you are
that you're seen.
seeing them.
Yeah. It's just being seen. Yeah.
And so it's important. So we ask our volunteers who want to do construction to get on a calendar. Yeah. So Jerry Korber is our coordinator for that.
Yep.
And Jerry's been a great help. And like I said, all of those telephone numbers and so forth, I didn't prepare shamefully, but maybe we could say them at the end.
Yeah, we can do that.
And so anyway.
We'll put it on when we put it up too.
Yeah, and I think that's important. But also, if you have other skill sets and resources that we could use, I mentioned things that we could really use, and that is some counselors. Yeah. We were not finding much for grant money to do that and to have any long-term counselors. So asking if there's somebody in the long range or the wider community that hears this and maybe says, well, I could donate an hour or two somewhere.
Yeah.
Somebody who does financial work, right? Yeah. So you can plug into this in a lot of different ways.
Sure.
We have, like you said, an event coming up at the indoor fair. We're going to need people to do meal runners and all those. So there's all kinds of little things that people can do that really mean big things because they're part of a team.
For sure. All right. So the indoor fair, just for anyone that wants to know, March 19 and 20. So it's coming up in a little bit. We will, the long-term, and when I say we, I mean the long-term flood recovery group will be providing a meal that's going to be available to people who come and visit. It will be at the Dort Rec Center. So if you're interested in, helping out with running a meal out to people who are in the expo, or you want to just visit with folks as they come in, if you want to donate something towards a meal, like we can certainly use any and all part of that. Certainly calling, we'll put the information up there as far as who to call, certainly calling Justice for All, and any other number that we add to the video would certainly be a part of it. But yeah, I guess just in sort of wrapping up a little bit, are there other things that we should add into, or did you want to share it all?
Well, I guess I just want to thank the community for the patience and recognizing that it has taken time and it will take more time perhaps, but that we haven't forgotten anybody. Right? If they've registered or done a survey, they're on our spreadsheet, they're on our list, and we're going to be connecting because our advocacy piece calls them back and we'll say and we'll keep in touch.
Whether they stopped into this warehouse and filled out a needs assessment, an unmet needs assessment with World Renew when they were here for a couple weeks, or if they've called to Tetra Tech and gotten that number. I know our staff has handed out that number a fair amount.
Right.
If you've put in your information on an unmet needs assessment, it is in the process of being looked at, being evaluated, and we'll certainly be in touch with you.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's ultimately what we know that this is it's not even a year into it, not even a year since the flood.
No, and I would just like share with the community that at this point, this LTRG is a poster child for the state. We have hit the ground running. We are, like I said, we're only about 9 months in.
Yeah.
And most disasters take about a year or more to be up and running to where we are.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's great. I'm just saying we're doing good. And so this community, there's something very unique about it. And so part of that response, part of our ability to function as well as we are, happened right away from day one when all these volunteers came to help muck out and do all those kinds of things. We're just the long-term piece that stays and remains, but there were so many people involved in this. We're just a part of. The
response initially was incredible.
We're a part of that, and that's because of that, and because of this community, we're doing better than most others, and so let's thank God for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just like I said, it requires patience, and we understand that there's some overwhelming stuff that we got to address. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, thanks very much for being on, Ron. And we're not even a year out from the flood, and we're continuing to work through this, and it'll be a long-term deal. Maybe a deal in maybe a year from now or a year and a half from now, we'll have you back on. You can be like, hey, here's all the things that happened. I don't know. We'll have to keep that in mind. I know we'll be in touch about a lot of things that are happening on the flood recovery and that as well. So I appreciate sharing information on some of your background and the work that you're doing with the long-term flood recovery.
Thank you.
So yeah, my name is Joel DeWitt. I'm Executive Director at Justice for All. This is Ron DeWeerd. He's the Chairman of the Long-Term Flood Recovery Group for Sioux and Lyon County. And we thank you very much for listening and watching, and God bless.